Hi there. Now, I have something to tell you that may be of high interest. So I believe it may be in your best interest to sit down for this.
Well, it rained yesterday, and I don't want to have a wet butt. I'll put my drink down if that helps. Set the mood. Oh, no.
What?
I was trying to set my cup on the edge, but I dropped it over the side. I hope it doesn't hit anyone.
Well, if it's styrofoam, then it won't do any damage.
Oh, it's styrofoam? What if nobody finds it? Stupid mistakes are bad enough when they aren't destroying the environment.
Well, then you better hope it hits someone. Okay, now that you're situated, listen up. From what I know, I can infer that you are very busy in thought most of the time, so I will try to keep this as concise as possible. I'm shifting my focuses away from evil and apologize for getting you banned from the theater.
Wait, what?
Yes, I know this may be overwhelming news to understand, but truly I found it easier when creating things to not focus so much on their evil intentions. I get a lot more done. And plus, there'll always be someone out there to find an evil use for everything. So why should I waste my time on it? Plus, I've never really been into the whole villainy thing entirely. More so the tomfoolery aspect.
Wow, this is a... Well, I always kind of liked you. I never really believed you would hurt me, and I'm glad I was right. And Chuck is okay with this?
Well, of course, he's always been more concerned than I. And he really likes making things. And I'll never tell this to his face, but he's really not that good with lasers.
Wowee, I'm in disbelief. I didn't expect to come to this party thinking, I'll find a new friend. And that new friend being a friend I already consider a friend, but now they think I'm a friend too. Amazing. Ooh, speaking of friends, you might want to talk to Jelly separately, because I don't really think she's going to be as accepting as I am.
Well, of course I'm aware of that. That's why I sent Chuck to go talk to her instead. I feel he's much more easygoing. Not that I'm not easygoing. I'd say I'm decent to talk to. Maybe a little grumpy sometimes, but...
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a good idea to send Chuck over too. I mean, everyone likes Chuck.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy this is not on my bingo card for today, but it's a welcome surprise. Wow, your coat is really warm. And also that white robe thing you're wearing.
All right, that's enough touching for maybe about 2 months.
Oh, so good to see you.
Yes, I shall be departing now, as too much of a good thing is... well, not that.
My countenance is of the highest happy right now.
This is a great day for us, Alice. I'm so glad that you volunteered to be the person who lets people in.
Who am I letting in?
You're letting in the people who are invited, which is everyone. So really, all you have to do is lead them through the velvet ropes.
Why have them in the first place if I'm just leading people through?
Well, that's an easy answer. It's because the first thing people see when they come to a party is the entrance. If the entrance is just a bunch of ropes, there's nothing to stop people from just messing up the entrance and ruining it for everyone else.
But the party's already been going on for an hour. I don't see how this is going to change anything.
Change is a probability thing. Just because there's a small chance that something won't happen doesn't mean that if that small chance were to occur, it would make any difference. Because the thing that had a small chance to happen would have already happened, and we are now living in the time where it happened. So it doesn't matter if it had a very small chance of happening. If it happens, it's going to happen, and I'm just trying to be careful.
Oh, well, when you put it that way, now I went from understanding it barely at all to understanding it barely at all, little less.
Let me try to explain what I'm thinking. So let's say there's a 1 in a million chance that something will happen. And before that thing happens, there's a 100% chance that it hasn't happened yet. But once it does happen, there's a 100% chance that it has happened. So it either happens or it doesn't. It doesn't matter how rare the probability is, because that would be looking at the past, when we're living in the present, and the thing has already happened.
Oh, so you're saying if I'm not standing here on guard, then there's a 100% chance that I'm not standing there on guard. But due to the probability of me standing on guard, now there's a 100% chance of me standing on guard, which means nothing.
Yes, now that you have volunteered to stand guard, there's a higher probability that you're going to stand guard than if you did not volunteer. That's what I'm saying. Ooh, this is an even better example. The chance that a beverage were to randomly splash on your face about 5 seconds ago was nearly zero. There was a very low probability of it happening, but now that it has happened, the probability is now 100%. And the new probability is whether or not you're going to find a way to clean up before it dries into your fur.
I hate stats.
Quitting evil, and that's about the whole story. I'll leave you alone for a few minutes if you need to process that, but I'm not trying to trick you or anything. You can tell because of the fact that my eyes are like this. Yeah, trustworthy people look at each other like this all the time. I see it. But if you have any further questions, just flail around a bit so I know that you have them. Try stand out from the crowd. Bye.
So did you convince her?
Well, I think so, maybe. I mean, she did kind of look at me like this. So, I think that's enough convincing. Guess I'll have to do this myself. Stand down, Chuck. Hi there. So it seems that you have not been convinced by my partner that you and I are no longer enemies, but instead, rather, either mutual friends or just mutual enemies. That's up for you to decide. Due to our past conflicts, I can certainly see why you would not want to be friends. But at the very least, I'm hoping to break even with acquaintances, neutralities, or just you're that one guy from the theater. Now, theoretically, I could be lying to you about this whole thing. But if I were lying, then why would I tell you that I were lying? As this would now cause confusion between both of us as to who's telling the truth and who is telling the truth while not telling the truth. And I think it would be a whole lot less complicated to just be genuine. And I am genuinely saying that I no longer wish any harm upon you, or your peanut buttery friend, or any others that I'm not aware of. I'm sure Chuck already showed you the eyes thing, but if he didn't, I could demonstrate it for you. And if he did, I could demonstrate it for you again. Although, one of the least genuine things a person can do is insist and reiterate over and over again about how genuine they are. My genuosity is coming from a place of certain genuineship, and I hope you can accept my apology. Also, don't tell Billy, but you're my favorite of the two. You know, favorite in a potential friend kind of way. Not in a favorite in, I like to pick on that one more than the other one way. In that way, Billy is my favorite, because he's a whole lot easier to spook. So now, I leave you with the choice. To fist bump or not to fist bump. Wait, I wasn't looking. Was that a sign of aggression or did you actually do it? Okay, thank you.
Jelly, I have something to tell you. Something involving today. And yesterday, 1,460 days ago. And yesterday, 1,460 days ago from then. Yes, it is true. Yes, it's true I lied to you, but I've lied to you for a noble reason. Because if you knew the truth, you would cease our friendship immediately. Respond how you will with this information, but it's true. I was born on Leap Day. Just as big a deal as I thought it would be. Yeah, we're cool. Hello, welcome to Billy Nut Joe's Rant, where today I have some things to say before we get started. Mainly just one thing on the topic of leap year, as my opinions on this may be slightly biased. I recently learned that it was actually Julius Caesar who first proposed the idea of leap day. And let me just say, Julie, there's going to be a few more things than the Ides of March you're going to have to be concerned with. I'm very thankful right now because most 4-year-olds can't even speak coherent sentences. And here I am, 4th birthday, perfectly capable of speaking coherent sentences. But then again, I can't think of anything to say. I mean, what is there to say? Today's such an important day for me, you'd think it'd be super easy to think of something to say. But I don't want to come across as selfish. So instead of talking about me, let's talk about this show, which has also been around for 4 years. Although not leap years, just normal, everyday years. Which has got to be some sort of crime against grammar. Everyday years. Anyway, I'm sure a lot of stuff has happened on this show, so let's just have a quick reminisce about the past 4 years. Oh, can't complain too much. That was pretty much my favorite part. You know what? Leap days aren't even that bad. Reflecting on my past feelings about them, I used to think it was the worst, because it only comes around once a year. But now, I think they might actually be the best day of the year. You know, the best day of 25% of the years. Because really, it's compensation for my bad luck. Because while I could technically make the social excuse of celebrating a birthday every year on like March 1st or February 28th, but now everyone else this year who wasn't born in January or February has to wait an extra day for their birthday. So who's really suffering here? On third thought, though, considering I am not a selfish jerk, yeah, it does suck. It does kind of suck, just a little bit. Not a bit that would be considered teensy tiny, but a marginal enough suckage that it's probably in the lower 200s of the best days of the year. On fourth thought, I'd say that along with the fact that propeller hats don't actually make you fly, Leap Day is a pretty big disappointment. I mean, it might sound like a big day, like plan what you're going to do on this bonus day that only comes every 4 years, but like it's really not that special when you consider that people who don't follow the Julius Caesar calendar don't even acknowledge the extra day. Or maybe they do, and it's March. As for a fifth thought, I don't really think that's necessary. Or you could also say, it's not necessarily quintessential. Wow, for a sixth thought, if that's really what we're ending on, maybe the show isn't as good as I thought it was. Don't worry, I got something really great planned for next time. This has been Billy Nut Joe's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed.
Really, as a superhero, I find it necessary to advise to you that you shouldn't be out at this time of day in this weather. It's wet and dreary and sad. Why would you want to be out here on a dark and stormy night?
'Twas. Don't worry about me. I'm at ease as is. And I do have a reason to be out here at this time of day.
If your reason has anything to do with the talk show, it's not a good reason.
Well, yeah, it's not a good reason, but I think it would be aesthetically fitting for what I'm talking about right now. Today's topic revolves around an incredibly misunderstood and very often debated topic, that being the story of Frankenstein. There are many, many, many people who have not read the original book, but still know what Frankenstein is, due to the popular media interpretations of it, which somehow came about despite the fact that nearly all of them are completely wrong in how it portrays the story.
Well, it can't be that well known a story because I've never heard of it.
You've never heard of Frankenstein?
I haven't heard of lots of things, but if talking about it is endangering you and public safety, then I don't want to hear about it.
Well, to educate you a little bit, Frankenstein is a story about a man who gets inspired to create a living being, but struggles to deal with the responsibilities that come with having created that living being.
Okay, maybe I am a little interested in that. And by that I mean tell me everything.
Okie dokie. I'm not usually used to you being so interested in what I have to say, but before we begin that story, I'd like to apologize for something. In a previous episode, I said that the body part that contains all the organs, you know, the big organ sac thing, was discovered recently, when the thing I was reading from almost definitely said that it was reclassified recently as just one continuous organ, instead of having, you know, multiple parts and stuff, which is a pretty stupid mistake by my part. I don't remember feeling very smart that day. Anyway, into Frankenstein. That was on my mind because Frankenstein has something to do with biology, even though Frankenstein himself isn't a biologist, or a mad scientist even. But anyways, the story begins not how most people think of Frankenstein, with, you know, dark, stormy castle with guy in his basement making big monster. No, it actually begins in the Arctic, of all places. Yeah, that's right, Frankenstein's a Christmas story. Yeah, okay, not really, but it's definitely wintry in theme. The story begins with a man named Walton, who's exploring the Arctic for scientific exploration reasons, when he comes across this guy on an iceberg who calls himself Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein, which I'm just going to be referring to him as Victor from now on, because of that whole debate. Is the Frankenstein monster called Frankenstein, or is it the Victor who's called the Frankenstein, which I'll definitely bring up later. So Walton saves Victor from the iceberg, and Victor begins to tell him about how he should stop his expedition to the North Pole, because it's going to end in disaster. Because he ended up doing something brave that nobody had done before, and it ended in disaster for him. And then the rest of the book is Walton hearing the story from Victor. And so I guess the book is meant to be his transcription of what Victor said, in which case I have to say Walton is very good at writing. Although it goes without saying, the book wasn't actually written by an Arctic explorer named Walton, who met some guy named Victor on an iceberg. It was written by a lady named Mary Shelley. But if I told you her story, that would be me telling you the story about the woman who wrote the story about the man who's telling the story about the man who built the other man who started killing everyone. Which is a bit too many stories and stories for me. Let's stick with just Walton and Victor for right now. I want to get into the first topic of debate, the whole Frankenstein's monster or Frankenstein thing. But first, I'm going to have to explain where that actually came from. So when Victor's telling Walton about his story, he mentions that he went to a university at Ingolstadt, which is someplace off in Europe. And despite what popular media would tell you, Victor did not actually major in mad, evil, crazy scientist basement people studies. He actually majored in natural philosophy, I think. Victor tells the whole story about his childhood and how he grew up really rich, and how he made lots of friends, like this one guy at the university called Henry, who's relevant later. He also has an adopted sister named Elizabeth, who he really wants to marry, because that's just, it's not weird at all, pretty much, yeah. Totally normal. And she's also important later. But yeah, Victor lived a very happy life up until then. But there was one thing on his mind. It's just, why can't I create life? Why can't I discover the secrets of life and death, huh? So Victor decides to cast away his friends and family and lock himself in his basement for 2 years, so he can use his natural philosophy superpowers to piece together a human being. And that person he creates, called the creature, or the demon, in the book, is the main topic of interest when it comes to Frankenstein. You know, when you say Frankenstein, you think of the big green guy with the bolts in his neck. And though the movie depiction of Frankenstein, where he's big green and has bolts in his neck, is actually a really cool design, it's not what's in the book. Although not really, because it never explicitly says that there's bolts coming out of his neck, which would make sense because he channels lightning through him to revive him. It just says that he has, like, black wispy hair and, you know, dead eyes and stuff. Which a lot of people will say, well, the book's description is a whole lot different than the movie monsters, but they aren't really that different. The only difference is that the movie version gives Victor a whole lot more credit, because I don't think that a natural philosophy major, let alone anyone, could actually construct a human being that convincing. If the book just said it looked like a huge mess, that probably would have been a fitting description for how it would realistically turn out. Because Victor wants to create the creature so that he can have, sort of a son, someone to raise and bring into the world. Which comes up the thing, you wouldn't call the Frankenstein monster Frankenstein because Frankenstein's the doctor. Well, first, he's not a doctor. And secondly, I think it would make sense to call the creature Frankenstein. Because if the creature was ever given an actual name, and Victor raised it as his son, he probably would be called Creature Frankenstein, with that as the last name. So I think that would make perfect sense. Unfortunately for Victor, when he first meets the creature, he thinks that it is so ugly, despite having looked at it for 2 years, that he runs away in fear, leaving the monster to its own devices. While Victor is in his room, contemplating what he'd just done, I'm sure very proud of himself for having created life out of essentially nothing, but natural philosophy major, the monster manages to escape his basement and steals his journal. And after learning to read, the monster decides to take vengeance and kill Victor's family and friends, to get back at him for not being there the second he was born. A bit of an overreaction, but I can definitely see where he's coming from. That's as far as I'll go in terms of spoilers. I don't want to tell you who the monster kills and who he doesn't. So I'll leave you to read the book on your own, but there's still a lot to talk about with regards to Frankenstein.
So the creature guy was ostracized for being different than everyone else?
The creature throughout the book does attempt to make friends with people before going on his homicidal rampages, but unfortunately for him, the people that he meets, when they first look at him, run away because he looks like he was built by a natural philosophy major. Popular media depictions of Frankenstein often include angry mobs that try to hunt down and kill the monster, even though that doesn't really happen in the book. It's more the monster hunting down and killing them. A similarity to real life, because obviously people don't come back from the dead in real life, is that when the movie Jaws was first released, somewhere back in, the summer of 1774, the number of people who started hunting sharks increased because they saw the movie about a shark that kills people, and they thought, oh, all sharks must be evil. And so that led to an unfortunate increase in the amount of shark deaths in the world. And even though that movie came out a while ago, the public perception of sharks is still tainted to this day. I mean, nobody wants to see a shark in the water. Even if they haven't seen the movie before, they've probably heard from other people that sharks are dangerous, even though most of the time they don't attack people. I'd say if the undead were real and harmless, then Frankenstein would have had a negative influence on them, because then everybody would think, oh, somebody brought back from the dead? Well, you must be just like Frankenstein, which would obviously lead to bad things.
That's a joke, right? You're not serious.
No, I don't think it's a joke, actually. Based on real-life events of similar nature, I think that if undead were real, they would face a whole lot of harassment, and probably a few angry mobs.
I can't believe those other people. Judging people just because they're undead? That's just discrimination. Thank you, Billy. I know now what I must do.
Wait, that doesn't mean you're gonna go create a Frankenstein's monster, right? And have it kill all your family and friends? Just to clarify, we're not friends, right? There could be a whole lot more to talk about in terms of Frankenstein and differences between the movie and popular media depictions and the actual book. Like how there's no Igor in the book. And he never says, it's alive, even though that's an incredibly popular Frankenstein catchphrase nowadays. But yeah, I don't see how Igor would really ruin the book that much. I guess you could say that Henry Clerval was the Igor, because he's, his friend. He doesn't really do any assisting in the mad scientist stuff. I'm sorry, I mean natural philosophy. But yeah, I don't have much to say, so I guess this has been Billy Nedger's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Hello, welcome to Billy Nedger's Rant. Happy St. Patrick's Day. As such, Jelly will not be here today, as she's off celebrating with her family. You thought yesterday's topic was a doozy? No, that would be the moment right now. This topic. If you know me a little bit, you may know that sometimes I like to talk about the video game series Doom. It's not an obsession or anything, just an interest. Something that happens to lead to a lot of things that can be thought of, and questions to be asked. With one of those questions is, why have I not talked about Doom 3? I mean, I've been so thorough. I've talked about Doom 1, Doom 2, Doom 64, Doom 2016 probably, although I don't actually remember doing that, and even Doom Eternal. In fact, I've talked about it so much that I set a rule for myself, no more talking about Doom. But you see, I've been saving Doom 3 for a while, because it's more than just a game to be talked about. It could possibly answer questions, such as how life on Earth came to be. If you're not familiar with Doom 3, that doesn't really matter. All you have to be familiar with is that Doom 3 is controversial because they changed the shotgun. Yeah, the shotgun in Doom 1 and 2. Really powerful, works from far range, and kills monsters real good. The shotgun in Doom 64, basically the same thing, but with a whole lot less frames of animation. But what makes the shotgun in Doom 3 so special? Well, it's special because it blows. It blows at blowing apart monsters. It blows at blowing. It's just not entirely reliable. Mainly because the spread of the attack is so wide that there's a very low chance, the probability of doing the maximum amount of damage it can do. Which, if you scale it that way, it's a little bit better than the shotgun in Doom 1 and 2. If theoretically every shot were to hit. But that's never going to happen. Or is it? You see, the shotgun in Doom 3 could be considered an allegory for the history of life on the planet, Earth. It can only attain its maximum amount of power through a series of incredibly unlikely events over a long history of time. The only difference being, the shotgun in Doom 3 sucks, while the theoretical shotgun that created the world is awesome. Let me explain. Evolution as a concept may seem quite bewildering at first, as it states that some unknown, entirely, organism on very, very early Earth eventually came to form into all the wonderful animals and varied life on the planet that we have now. Just saying that, with no other evidence or explanation, makes it sound ridiculous. It sounds stupid. How can one little single-celled organism, microscopic speck thing, turn into a million bazillion creatures? Well, nobody knows, but some pretty smart people have come up with decent guesses that are backed by a lot of sniffing around in the dirt with magnifying glasses and the like. Pori Hemplar, let us use the beloved Cacodemon from Doom as a stand-in for a species that is evolving through evolution. The reason I choose the Cacodemon is because it is a fictional creature, so it does not necessarily have to abide to the standard evolutionary timeline, which, keep in mind, has consisted since the beginning of the Earth. So for millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of years. Keep that in mind as I explain this. Because as far as we know, maybe demons don't evolve over millions of years. Maybe it only takes a few generations to evolve. As the Doom guy from Doom's experiences is only that of about, 100 years? Since he's immortal or whatever. He's probably only seen, at most, a few hundred years on the battlefield. But the demons he's fought against are changing all the time. So who's to say that's not just because of the evolution of graphics and art style changes? Maybe it's because they're actually evolving. In biology, the aforementioned little fella who eventually led to all the life on Earth is referred to as Luca, or the last universal common ancestor that shared lineage with everything. And no one exactly knows what it looks like, so I'll just write it down as Luca. And let's say for this example, that over the course of millions of years, one of the, sisters of Luca eventually evolved into what we know as the Cacodemon. Let's see where we go from there. One factor that can influence the change of a species over time is environment. For example, on the left, we have the Doom 3 Cacodemon that lives on Mars. And for this example, we are specifically looking at whatever organ in a Cacodemon allows it to float. Theoretically, the floating organ on the Martian Cacodemon would not need to be as strong as the floating organ on the earthly Cacodemon that we see on the right. So the Martian Cacodemon may use less energy for its flotation device than the earthly one would. You can also notice some other differences, such as the earthly Cacodemon having a lot more spikes and a bigger mouth, which would make sense because being on Earth would mean that it's up against a lot more predators than the Martian Cacodemon, with its admittedly pretty weak-looking jaw and straight-up exposed brain, so it probably doesn't have many predators that it would need to evolve natural defenses like spikes. In fact, evolution does not only improve animals, but can sometimes de-prove them, Take a look at the Martian Cacodemon. Notice anything missing? That's right, the spikes. If the Martian Cacodemon doesn't have a need to defend itself from predators, it may lose its spikes over time. Species that are in the process of losing parts due to an evolutionary need to not have them anymore are called vestigial structures, which is the term for a part of the body that's no longer needed, but still exists there from a common ancestor that so happened to have them. They haven't completely evolved out of. For example, if you theoretically took the Martian Cacodemon's skull out, you might notice that maybe it has some small bumps where the horns used to be. This is similar to how humans have vestigial structures that are no longer useful, such as the appendix, the tailbone, and wisdom teeth, which all used to serve a function for earlier humans, but as they have evolved from that common ancestor that needed those things, they no longer need them, and as such become more of a hindrance than a help. A few more things on this chart I made earlier. Common ancestors are an incredibly, incredibly important thing in understanding evolution, because if you just say, this species became this species, that doesn't make sense. You're not taking into consideration the tens of thousands of potential missing species, the stepping stones that got you there. So this flowchart that's showing the common ancestor Caco, and then the Martian Caco, and then the terrestrial Caco, is not entirely accurate, because there are only 5 games in the series, and we don't have that much information on the Caco's evolutionary chain. But if you found a chart like this for more, existent creatures, I'm sure you could find a lot of missing links to fill in the gaps to make things more believable. In the studies of Charles Darwin, very real guy who studied about evolution, he notices that some species that are very similar, like lions and tigers, actually evolved to be different due to where they came from. So let's say, theoretically, this common ancestor Kako had some cousins who lived on the other side of either, Mars or Earth, or wherever this is. And those eventually evolved into what we know now as the Pain Elementals. As you can see on the chart, the common ancestor Pain Elemental that evolved separately than the common ancestor Kako. Cacodemons and Pain Elementals possess very different traits. For example, Cacodemons can fly and shoot fireballs, while Pain Elementals can fly and summon lost souls from their mouths. The common ancestor Pain Elemental can both fly and shoot lost souls, although if a portion of those Pain Elementals were in an environment where they no longer needed to shoot lost souls, they may evolve into a Pain Elemental that you see on the right from Doom Eternal that focuses more on using its jaws for attacking. Although it can still summon lost souls as a sort of vestigial structure, those lost souls are incredibly unstable and actually explode when trying to kill things. Which is, I'm not sure how they evolved to do that. I'm going to have to bust out the Punnett square for that one. It doesn't seem very advantageous to explode when trying to attack something. But as you can see, the other Pain Elemental, the Doom 64 Pain Elemental, evolved alongside its lost souls. Something we called co-evolution, where the Pain Elemental struck a deal with the lost souls by saying, hey, if you guys evolve to be more sturdy and protect me better, then I can evolve to spawn you better, and we can both live happily. As opposed to the Doom Eternal Pain Elemental, which said, screw you, you're going to explode, and I'm going to use my big mouth to, fly away from predators and just be, a coward. That may not be the best example of co-evolution, but hey, I'm working off of Doom monsters, give me a little bit of credit. Let's move on to another misconception about evolution, which is obviously evolution comes from, differences in species over time. So how do those differences occur? Well, they occur through reproduction. Sometimes the babies don't turn out exactly like the parents. As we can see in this example, we have a Baron of Hell on the left and a Robo Baron of Hell on the right, which is actually called an Armored Baron in the game, but Robo Baron sounds a lot better. The normal Baron and the Robo Baron have a baby, and that baby shares many of the traits with the normal Baron. That is because the Robo Baron is a cyborg, and cyborg is not something in your DNA that you can pass down to further generations. Much like how if two normal Barons were to reproduce, and one of those Barons lost one of its horns in, combat, the baby would not come out missing a horn, because that's not part of his DNA. That was a trait that was acquired during the lifetime of one of the parents. However, you could argue that the Robo-Barons actually do have something in their DNA that causes them to be mechanical. Because, in the game, if you break a Robo-Baron's armor, it can regenerate it by flashing, and then suddenly having all of its armors back. You could say that's some sort of mechanical implant that the UAC put inside of them, but I think it's much more likely that there may be some sort of DNA code inside of the Robo-Barons that allow them to somehow generate external structures. Kind of like generating a shield of fingernails. That would be the most sensical comparison I could make. And by sensical comparison, I mean I'm talking about demons that turn into robots. But theoretically, if being a robot is part of DNA, and a normal Baron and a Robo-Baron had a baby, we could follow this chart. Punnett squares, oh goody, I talk about them so much. Time to finally explain what the heck they are. Punnett square is a simple way to predict how an organism's offspring will come out. And while that sounds really useful, and oh boy, so I can make a Punnett square for people? No, you can't really, because it only works for incredibly simple organisms, like lima beans or something. So let's assume that these Barons are like lima beans. At the top and left, we have the genotypes for each parent. The top, little r, for the Robo-Baron, because being a robot is a recessive trait in this scenario. And to the left, we have big R, little r. Because in the world of Punnett squares, if you have one big R, then you can't have the recessive trait. Then you have the dominant trait, which in this case is not being a robot. So if we cross them for each square, taking the parent letter that's from the top and the parent letter that's from the left, then we get big R, little r, big R, little r, little r, little r, little r, little r. Which means half of the offspring would be regular old boring organic Barons, and the other half be super cool cyborg Robo-Barons. While on the topic of biology, I want to cover something that I've covered before, probably, which is scientific names for things, so-called scientific names, which are usually really wacky sounding. Like the iconic gorilla, which I think is the scientific name for the orangutan. The basic formula that scientific naming, or as nerds will call it, binomial nomenclature, is first name, genus, second name, species. Although instead of calling every single animal genus species, they actually came up with a bunch of different genuses and species. Using the Hell Priests from Doom Eternal as an example, as they all follow a similar naming structure, Deeg would be their genus, while Rannoch, Nylox, and Grov would be their species. Oh, my eyes! I've been staring at white text on a black background so long I think my pupils burned out. I know I say this every time, but that's just because it's true. I wish Jelly was here to hear all that, because I'm certainly not re-explaining it to her. So, in conclusion, Wait, what was I trying to prove again? This has been Billy Nacho's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Hello, welcome to Billy Nacho's Rant. I hope you're having a good morning. At least the calendar says that it should be a good morning, because apparently today is Good Friday. I don't know what makes this Friday any gooder than any previous Friday, because I think in general all Fridays are pretty good. The upper highness of days most weeks for sure. For whatever good reason Good Friday may happen to occur, that doesn't exactly narrow things down on what I should talk about. Good things? There are plenty of good things. In addition to that, there's no school today. Isn't that weird how some holidays, even ones that nobody even knows what it is, like Good Friday, you get school off, but then some other ones, you don't? Who decides these things? There also seems to be some sort of weighting system, whereas something like Good Friday gets 1 day off of school, whereas Christmas gets the entire week. If everything was weighted the same as that, then I'm pretty sure there wouldn't even be school anymore, because there's gotta be at least one something holiday every week. Speaking of holidays that I'm fortunate enough to get time off from school from, I'm thankful that people, way back then, have initiated all of these holidays already. Because imagine how hard it would be to get a holiday started now. You'd have to convince like 1 million different school districts all over the state what they want to do. And because of varying cultures and stuff, if you want everyone and the entire world to get a day off from school, good luck with that. Okay, if I had to come up with a holiday that got everyone in the world a day off of school, I'd say International Hydration Day. It's a day where you don't go to school and instead you drink water. And that's about it. The truancy officers will come knocking at your door if you don't drink at least 2 cups of water that day, but otherwise you get the day off of school. I guess that would work for everyone, unless you're a mermaid, in which case it would be International Aeration Day? Inflation Day? What's the word for hydrating with air? Well, that's just lame. That's a bit of a cop-out, dictionary people. Shouldn't it be aeration? Or refresh-dation, because, it's refreshing to get a gulp of air if you're stuck in the water, although it could be the opposite true. I guess that's a double-way thing, but whatever, I'm dropping it. Speaking of which, it is spring, which is great, but it's also still super cold, which is confusing. I'm gonna have to make a stern phone call to Puxatawny Phil and ask him what's been happening. What it's like right now, cold in spring, it's kind of like if you just ate a bar of chocolate and then you licked your teeth and they didn't taste like chocolate. That's the best analogy you're gonna get. Here's a deep philosophical question. You know how some days there are, national holidays, they're like Remembrance Day of X event that happened to happen on that day? Well, yeah, I'm sure you remember those Remembrance Days, but what about the days that don't have a remembrance tied to them? Do you remember those days? No, you don't. So I propose every day should be yesterday's day, Remembrance Day. That's right, hold your applause. I just canceled school. Except for the fact that most Remembrance Days, you still go to school, I guess, to learn about what happened on that Remembrance Day. So I guess that makes enough sense. So now school is basically just looking back at yesterday and seeing what happened. And what happened was you went to school, and then you looked back at what happened yesterday. And what happened to that yesterday was you went to school and looked back at what happened on that way yesterday. And I've created a terrible future. Great. This is why I'm not in charge. If I were in charge, I'd say that spring doesn't start on a specific day, because it fluctuates every year, and it also doesn't start when a groundhog tells you it does. Spring should start when there have been at least 3 days in a row where the weather is above 50 degrees. The opposite is true in parts of the world where spring is cold and winter is warm. Spring should only start when there have been multiple days in a row where it's been under X amount of degrees. And don't tell me about the rotation of the Earth and its position and relevance of the sun. Because to be honest, I don't care about the planet's position. What matters is what we feel on Earth. And if it's super cold in spring, that ain't spring. They shouldn't call it Good Friday. They should call it Lazy Friday. Because I just woke up an hour ago, and now I'm just talking about seasons again. I should leave that to the groundhogs and try to come up with something productive to do. Figure out why it's called Good Friday. Ha! You've been deceived. I actually do know why it's called Good Friday. And it's not for the reason you may think if you don't know why it's called Good Friday. Yeah, why don't you do a little bit of research on that? Don't worry, I'll stay here, petite and in waiting, while you look it up. What is Good Friday? Or why is it called Good Friday? Yeah, do that. I'll give you 5 seconds. I bet y'all love when I send you on little research projects like this. 3, 2, 1. Okay, come back. Yeah, Good Friday, my favorite holiday, next to Scaffus Tuesday and Brazen Bull Thursday. Let's not forget Guillotine Monday. Ooh, and Waterboarding Saturday? That's just my favorite one. Judging off of my rules for Hydration Day, does that mean that if we want a day off of school, we have to go crucify someone? This has been Billy Nacho's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. So, what brings you two over here?
Well, we were just outside taking a walk until we were spontaneously underwater. I've never seen it rain this much, and I grew up in the rainforest. Perhaps this whole thing is just some late April Fool's joke that nobody understands.
Ultraviolet, may I ask you permission to ask a question?
Yes.
Now, when I say this, I'm not blaming you for anything in particular, but it's just on my mind. This abnormal amount of rain. Did you two have anything to do with it?
I appreciate that for some reason this made you think of us, but unfortunately we don't possess the technology required to make a weather-controlling satellite, although it would be pretty nice to be able to control the weather, stop it from being annoying. The only thing I hate more than the weather are clothes that are not the color white.
He's incredibly easy to shop for.
If you guys ever do get around to making a weather-controlling satellite, can I request that it make it be able to rain orange juice?
Veto! Rain already feels terrible and sticky when it's just water.
I agree with Chuck on this one. Silly childish ideas are silly and childish in idea, which is why they're called that. Otherwise they would be called silly and child practices. Have we influenced you in some sort of way? What's with those robot faces on the wall?
Oh, those aren't robot faces, those are helmets. You see, it's been tradition that every April Fool's Day, me and Jelly talk about something Dark Souls related, and those would have been props if we had been able to get together this year. But, you know, the weather's been pretty crummy. I think it would break the immersion if we were wearing something that's supposed to be made out of metal and it's all misty outside. I want people to watch because they're interested in what I have to say, not because they want to watch a slab of metal rush into my face. The story we would have talked about is one about a serial killer and a bandit guy who get into a squabble with each other, and they chase each other all around the lands, and it's pretty romantic, really, if the romantic part is they want to kill each other.
That actually does sound like a pretty interesting story. What do you think, Chuck?
Well, I do like dark stories, and I do have a soul, so I find that pretty relatable. Plus, with all this rain, we're not going to be able to return home. So let's make the best of it with a sleepover.
Yes, a sleepover! I too am on board with that concept. You two ready to have your socks knocked off, or whatever other footwear apparel you may be wearing? But that's irrelevant, because as I promised, I will be discussing the story of Pate and Creighton. Patey and Crady are interesting characters in Dark Souls 2, because unlike most characters in Dark Souls 2, they're actually pretty interesting. You see, Pate, the one with the big nose, is a thief, and Creighton, the one with no facial identity whatsoever because he constantly wears a metal mask, is, as you can guess by most people who keep their identity secret by wearing a metal mask, Iron Man. Or, a serial killer. If this were a movie, that would really just be that, and you see how things would play out between them. But since they are characters in a video game, then the player actually does get to decide who they want to help out. And by help out, I mean kill the other guy. And the game does a strange thing with morality by actually making Creighton, the worst of the two criminals, seem like the nice guy. Because he doesn't really inconvenience you the way Pate does, in terms of actual gameplay. Pate throws you into a ring full of zombie warriors, and he forces you to go through a deadly windmill puzzle, full of poison darts and stuff, just so he doesn't have to open the door. Meanwhile, all Creighton does is obsess over the fact that Pate stole his ring. Meanwhile, Creighton is just kinda sulking around all emo all the time. And the only encounters you have with him that would really pose any sort of inconvenience are the very first time, where he's locked in a little jail cell, but that jail cell also has a checkpoint in it, so you're gonna want to open it anyway. So it's not so much an inconvenience as it is, hey look, there's something I want in that jail cell, and there's also like a dude in there. Which is also foreshadowing for the fact that he is kind of a crazy murderer guy. Because you can't really tell just because from the metal mask. Because, most people in Dark Souls wear crazy murderer masks. And some of them are pretty cool. The ones that aren't crazy. Or, the ones that are just crazy and neutral, or crazy and nice. The reason old Crady is found in that jail cell is not because he locked himself up as a timeout, but rather because Pate tricked him into going down there, and then ran away with his ring. This ring that he really, really likes. A ring called the Ring of Thorns. Which may sound cool if you've never played the game before. And it may even sound cool if you have played the game, but just never found the Ring of Thorns. And why would you? Rings in Dark Souls 2 are divided into rarity categories, with the base ring, the +1 ring, and then the +2 versions of the ring. The +1 version of the Ring of Thorns you can buy from the ghost guy that doesn't like light. But who would actually be willing to spend money on this piece of crap? And then the +2 version, get this, that's for winning 1,000 PvP victories. 1,000! I've tried PvP in that game, and it can take 5 to 10 minutes to connect to a match. 1,000. For a ring that all it does is every time you take damage, there's a chance that it also damages the enemy. Wow, really interesting. I can see why Creighton would want that. Because he doesn't like other people. Because, he's a serial killer. But I think if he was really a serial killer, then he should have the +2 version of the ring. Although I guess it's the only way to get the +0 version of the ring is from the Creighton and Pate quest. Sorry. We don't know about its unlock requirements. Maybe Creighton got it from 10,000 PvP victories. Personally, I don't see why Crazy Patey Banana Fofady hates Pate so much. I mean, they're basically the same person. The same sucky person. Just one's manipulative and the other kills people. So, like, why can't they just get along? Maybe the only reason Pate took the ring is because he was going to propose to him later. But instead of having a nice wholesome ending like that, the actual Pate and Crate story ends with the two of them fighting to the death. Which is a decision somewhat determined by which one of their AIs is stronger. Which, if I had to guess, probably Pate, since he has a shield. It's all up to the player to decide who to help. Or maybe they could just kill both of them at the same time, but I don't think that's possible. Though personally, I think Creighton is a much more reasonable chap. I usually decide to kill him, because then you get his cool mask. And, yeah, that's the only reason. So then the story of both of them ends with whichever one you didn't kill thanking you for killing the other guy and saying, wow, that guy was such a jerk. And then he gives you a key. And you use the key to open a door that leads to a little house. And you go in the house, and there's a chest. And you open the chest, and it's a bomb. And whoever you didn't kill laughs at you for being so stupid as to trust them, because you just got blown up by a bomb. And then you also get the best gloves in the game. So that's worth it. I can tell you two are barely following with the soul stuff as it is, so I won't go on a 30-minute rant about why I love the engraved gauntlets, and I think that they're super cool. So yeah, that's the story of Peyton Creighton. And if you're wondering who actually owns the house, you could say it's a Schrodinger's cat situation, where if you kill Pate, then Creighton is the one who owns the house with the bomb chest in it. But if you kill old Crady, then Pate is the one who owns the bomb chest engraved gauntlet house. You know, time is convoluted, as they said in Dark Souls 1, so maybe they both own this house as a shared property. And the whole reason they were killing each other is because they wanted to put all the taxes on the other guy. Who knows? Also, just in case any of you two fellas are nerded in a different kind of way, did you know that the voice actor for Pate is actually Darth Maul? Yeah, the red spiky guy from the Phantom Menace. He's the long-nosed stealing guy from Dark Souls 2. Who would have known? Literally nobody, because I don't think Darth Maul talks at all. Moving on from the far-off land of Drang Lake into the right-here land of, right now. In local news, yesterday was the first total solar eclipse in X amount of years. I didn't care to count. Which unfortunately for us, or fortunately for you retina-having fellas, we didn't get to see because of, you know, the rain, the clouds, and the general gloominess in the air. Things would have been a whole lot less gloomy if we had that big space laser coming down, frying everyone's eyes, sweeping across the nation. What a sad day to be an American. The day we can't look at the sun. Personally, I think that the eclipse is a bit of a, you know, it's a bad feeling. It's a bad vibe. Usually, I never consider looking at the sun. But now that you mention it, isn't it a bit weird that 90% of the sky is only visible at any time? 10% of it is taken up by a ball of blinding light that will terminate your right to see if you so much as glance at it. And the sun in real life ain't a cutesy little cartoon like on this rug. No. What the heck, son? I thought you were a Pate. Where'd you just want to steal my right to not have skin cancer when I don't wear sunscreen? But it turns out you're a Creighton. To the eyes. So guys, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Chuck?
What even is a Dark Soul? You mentioned it a lot. Sounds pretty cool, but I can't picture what a Dark Soul is in my head. Do you mind clarifying?
Oh yeah, I know what that is. It's like a big floaty thing in the sky that is either a replacement for the sun or on top of the sun. It's kind of like what's it called when a big dark thing gets in front of the sun? Sunspots. The Dark Soul is like a sunspot.
Oh, well, thank you for clearing things up, man. Amanda, I gotta tell you, things have been going really good for me lately. Because of all this rain, there's been nearly no crimes in the past few days. Not that there was much before, to be honest. And in addition, I haven't seen that giant robot guy in at least a few weeks. If things continue down this path, I won't even need to be a superhero. I'll just be some idiot with a cape and dumb hat. You look very handsome in that hat. Ha! I knew you would say that. That's a popularity technique that I haven't taught to you yet, because it seems a bit more dirty-handed. What I just did was insult my own self, which then triggered you to deconfirm my suspicions because of your own high opinion of me, through the use of self-duplication. You can write that down in your book if you want. What are you reading, by the way? I was just reading about this war in the late 1910s, where Europe was tearing each other apart, figuring out who was the best. I wish I was knowledgeable enough to help them out. And also, around at the time. All I can really do is read the facts, feel sad, and hope things get better for them. Frankly, I can't imagine how things can get much worse from here. Uh-oh. I'm actually very proud of you. reading all the way through history up until the 1900s. There's only like 10 more years before you get to the current day. Good for you, Amanda. Once you feel comfortable enough to start talking to people, I can introduce you to all my friends. Yep, all 3 of them. Speaking of my vast friend pool, if you don't want to be spoiled about them, I suggest you avert your empty sockets right now. Because look, there he is. Have fun. I love you. Tenor Bot, my man, what is up? I've not seen you in a hot second.
Hey there, guy, I totally know because you assured me as such by your introduction. Things have been going. How do the cool youths say? Swiggity swagtacular.
What are you doing here? No offense, but you don't exactly seem like the kind of person to read a book in his free time.
No offense, but neither do you, Pooch. If you must know, I'm not here to read a book or any nerd stuff like that. Nah, I'm here 'cause of the rain. A secondary objective would be to evangelize my own supreme being. And or maybe put books in wrong and politically incorrect shelves.
Better not touch the history section.
Huh?
Anyway, have you seen Billy or Jill lately?
No, I haven't seen Meg, or Juicy. Wherever they are, I pray they are soggy and getting damper by the second.
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far. I mean, sure, they are a bit dorky and can be annoying at times, but they're also just, people.
Yeah, sure. If you don't mind, please scamper away. I don't want any witnesses. I only trust myself with this.
All right, have fun with that. Whatever you're doing. I didn't see anything.
I'm going to go make popcorn in the middle of this place. Least I can do, I forgot my air horn.
Hello, and welcome to Billy Not Joe's Rant, the apparently now weekly show where I, do stuff. It's daily for me, but for you, it's weekly. Staying in the fourth wall aside, some things have been recently bothering me. Yeah! Remember when that used to happen? I'd be bothered by things? Me too. Because it's been, every day. But usually the things I'm bothered by are not worth talking about. Boring, mundane. But right now, I'm being served something on a silver platter. The werewolf killing dish in question is involving YouTube. You've probably heard of it. I'd say definitely, unless you've been kidnapped against your will to watch Billy Nut Joe's Rant on loop for the rest of your life, which sounds like a fate worse than death, then you know what YouTube is. It's the thing you're watching this on right now. And don't say, oh, I'm actually watching it on Scratch. No, you're not. You're not watching it on Scratch. Nobody watches on Scratch. You want to know why nobody watches on Scratch? Because Scratch doesn't make stupid, random decisions as often as YouTube does, which makes it less interesting and thus less popular. You hear that, MIT? All you have to do to increase traffic to the site? Be stupider. The YouTube feature I'm going to be talking about is relatively new. In fact, the first time I saw it was yesterday, which was Earth Day. And I was considering doing an episode on Earth Day, but come on, I talk about the Earth enough. Isn't that all the attention you need from me? Anyway, so this new YouTube feature involves the comments. The comments, my dear kidnap victim, is where people can post their opinions in written form about a video. But the one dang darn difficult thing about comments is that sometimes they're written in a language that you don't speak. Flipper off me a seal trapeze. Well, if I can't understand the comment, then what's the point of even trying to read it? I'm not going to go through the effort of Google translating that, which is what YouTube decided, which is now, under every non-English comment, and I assume that if you were to speak Spanish, then it would be under every non-Spanish comment, but I can't confirm that because I do not speak Spanish. There's now an auto-translate button where you can translate that into, the language that you can understand. And that's the thing I'm complaining about? Really? You're complaining about people reading? And no, I'm not complaining about that because I think it's a good feature. It's a smart feature. But no, as always, I don't have a problem with helping people understand other people. I have a problem with robots. It's always the robots. You see, unless, and this is entirely plausible, they hired a new dude at YouTube who just sits in their chair, scrolling through every comment and posting to every video and automatically translating it, in which case, thank you, soldier. The more obvious solution is to get an algorithm or AI or whatever the heck Bing chatbot you want to automatically translate stuff. And it works identically to Google Translate, which is to say it don't work too well. But I suppose that means you can't grammar check someone to try to win an argument in a comment. You'll still be able to understand the general idea and what they're saying. No, the real thing that's funny and that can be made fun of is sometimes this AI mistakes some things for being in a different language, and it includes the translate button, but it just translates the thing that was written into literally what it was written. For example, I saw a comment that simply said, yippee, with a bunch of E's at the end, and there's a translate button, and I was like, maybe this means something in a different language? Click the button, nope, yippee means yippee. I would never guess that. I think the way the bot might work is that it looks for dictionary words, and if it doesn't see a dictionary word, then it assumes, hey, maybe this is in a different language. Although, again, I'm not a robo-technician, so I have no idea, just speculating. But if that is the case, then it has a big issue with people's names, because generally on the internet, you don't go by your real name, you go by some, like, I don't know, silly, goofy name, which may or may not include actual words in it, or just be a bunch of nonsense. Yeah, like that nerd. You can go to an English video that has only English fans and only English comments written to it, and you'll still find Google Translate things, because for whatever reason, when you reply to someone with YouTube, it automatically puts at the person you're replying to. And sometimes the person you're replying to may not have actual words in their name. It may just be a bunch of nonsense. Google Translate sees this and it says, ooh, something that doesn't match up with the English dictionary, that must be in a different dictionary. Let me check my database. And then I'll insert a translation button. What does the translation button do? I don't know. Something? Oh, what's that? You don't care what I think would make actual good changes to YouTube? Well, I'm going to tell you anyway. Okay, maybe actual good changes to YouTube isn't the best way to put it, because this is a good change. It just has something silly to be pointed out about it. What I'm about to say doesn't have much silly to be pointed out about it, because it would just strictly be a helpful feature. But those of you who don't know, and this is a really useful thing to know, if you go to your YouTube homepage right now and click the little 3 dots stacked on top of each other next to a video, it'll be to the right of the title, then you'll see 2 buttons next to the report button, which you should probably already know what that does. Not interested and don't recommend channel. Not interested will remove that video from your homepage, and then, I don't know, the stupid algorithm will remove similar videos like that in the future. But don't recommend channel is the important one, because if you click that, boom, they're dead. You'll never see that channel appear in your recommendations ever again. My solution on how to make this feature easier to use is stop making it a homepage exclusive thing. If I find someone and I never want to see their videos again, I should be able to go to their channel, find the don't recommend channel button on there. Not watch some of their videos for a period of time with my eyes closed and my fingers in my ears and saying la 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 la, just to tempt the great algorithm to put that stuff on the homepage so I can destroy it. No, I just want to say no. Listen up, here's an epic life hack of how to zap away channels you don't like up from your homepage. All you have to do is go to the channel, and if they have stupid enough to have posted a YouTube short, go there, go to the short, and then you get the triple button with the death button. And then you can press it and blammo, you win. I'd say you can practice on me, but unfortunately I've never posted a YouTube short. And I mean, have you seen this aspect ratio? You think I want even less of it? This has been Billy Nacho's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Hello, welcome to Billy Nacho's Rant, and today we've got some crossover timeline tomfoolery. Is probably the best way I can put this. So most people who have been alive are probably aware of the famous scientist slash primatologist slash ecology nerd, Jane Goodall. Yeah, if you've been in a science class in the past decade, you've probably done some sort of like slideshow or essay about something related to her works, because she's a pretty famous scientist. On the topic of Jane Goodall, it was brought to my attention through multiple times aforementioned newspaper The Week Junior that there is a Jane Goodall inspired series of some sort. Or actually, no, it wasn't saying that there's a new series, it was saying that there's like a second season, but I hadn't heard of it. And the description from The Week Junior of the series really made me confused and interested. Before I read you this tiny little blurb of an article about the Jane Goodall series, I want to specify my credentials first. I am well versed in the Jane Goodall lore. You see, I had this graphic novel about Jane Goodall that sat at the bottom of my backpack for like 2 years, and I just read it in my free time. So I'm pretty well versed in the Jane Goodall story. So you can imagine my confusion when I read in this article, on page 21 of issue 211 of The Week Junior, it says, the series is called Just Jane, which I suppose is in line with the modern naming convention of shows based on people, where you just take either the first or last name. I've definitely mentioned that before. So in the article it says, quote, the series inspired by the mission of world-famous conservationist Jane Goodall. So it's not about her, it's just inspired. It's back for season 2. Again, didn't even know it existed, probably because it's on Apple TV Plus, a thing that like 6 people in the world probably own. In the new episodes, young environmentalist Jane, the main character's name in the Jane show, based on Jane Goodall, is Jane, but that's not confusing at all, goes on imaginary adventures with her best friend David and stuffed toy chimp Greybeard. Now, to most of y'all, that seems like a perfectly logical synopsis. There's Jane, or should I say not Jane, not that Jane, but it's a new Jane, a younger Jane, who's not young Jane. She's her own Jane, just a person named Jane, who has a friend named David, and an imaginary pet ape named Greybeard. Now that makes sense, sure. The confusing part is that it is inspired by Jane Goodall, and me knowing the real story of what happened about, Jane Goodall and stuff, is that, so in real life, there's Jane Goodall, there's David Greybeard, which is the name of one of the chimps that she worked with, but in the show, the character's name is Jane, but she's not that Jane, and she has two friends, David and Greybeard, which is just quite confusing, because they didn't need to create a new character by splitting up an actual ape's name into two people, because Jane Goodall in real life had an actual stuffed chimp named Jubilee. So who's Jubilee in the show is my question. This is just quite baffling to me, because it's confusing. It's a real life event, but it's not like historical fiction or something. It's a reboot of real life, really. Let me come up with an analogy, if you don't quite understand what I'm saying. So imagine a reboot of this show, just called Billy, and it stars a different squirrel, still named Billy, but not me. And then he has a friend named Joe, and an imaginary acorn named Nut. And that's the logic we're working off of here. Except instead of being a fictional cartoon squirrel, it's based on an actual scientist lady. Honestly, I think Jane was a bit too simple of a name for the show. They could have called it Jane, and keeping the little chimpanzee in the A on the logo, because I think that's pretty cool. And then right under that, because you see Jane, and then you see the chimpanzee, and you think, oh, Jane Goodall. And then under that, in parentheses, it says, no, not that Jane. I think that would make more sense. It is important to look past my own doofery and realize that, the Jane show, it's probably good. And if any of you watching have seen it, please tell me, because I'm not watching anything on Apple TV+. But that's not where the confusion ends. No. We got one final cherry on top. So after reading the Week Junior article, I went to the Wikipedia page for Jane, not that Jane, and I found that the opening theme song is called, get this, One Step Closer. No, not that One Step Closer. I'm talking about the One Step Closer theme song performed by Leona Lewis for the hit Apple TV Plus show, Not That Jane. I mean, Apple TV Plus. Everything you've said to me, I'm one step closer to the edge, and I'm about to break. That's all I'm going to say on that topic. I should probably segue into talking about streaming services and how it's silly that they all end in plus. But to be honest, to be boxed in to that close a topic related to the topic I was just talking about makes me a little claustrophobic. And I need a little room to breathe because I'm one step closer to the edge and I'm about to break. I mean, I assumed that would be an interesting talking point about what I just said, but now I find the answers aren't so clear. Wish I could find a way to... Alright, we get it. You've heard a song before. You want a cookie? That was you, the audience, talking to me, by the way. Now that I found somewhere I belong in the comfort department talking about subjects, it can be tough to remember what I've done before, and I often don't even consult previous topics, and can become quite numb to crawling around already spoken topics. For example, I should probably get into breaking the habit of going on long-winded paragraphical rants about what amounts to nothing but, well, nothing, in the end. This has been Billy Netro's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Ooh, and not to mention, it's the last day of April. So, I guess until May, I'll be gone. Hello, welcome to Billy Netro's Rant, and to be quite honest, I'm not doing too good right now. Get this, here's an interesting anecdote. I was hanging out with Jelly earlier this morning, and we were writing stuff on napkins, and she was making fun of me for spelling the word wiener wrong. And I didn't spell it wrong. W-E-I-N-E-R. Wiener. That really hurt my feelings, but it's fine, because then we laughed about the word wiener for like 5 minutes, so it's cool. What do you mean W-I-E-N-E-R? This isn't a whiner. A whiner is someone who prepares alcoholic beverages at a bar. A wiener is someone who drinks alcoholic beverages at a bar. Don't drink, kids. Basically, what I'm trying to say is the I before E except after C thing is just asinine and doesn't apply to most words you can think of. Sure, it sounds good. It's good to say. It sounds very flowy. It's a good mnemonic, but it's a worthless mnemonic because it's a mnemonic that don't mean nothing. And I say that under my own jurisdiction, or should I say my own sovereignty. With the exception of wiener problems, this has actually been a pretty good day, and I can't think of anything that would make it better. Okay, Billy, take things very slowly. You don't want to scare him off. Hello again, Creamy. How have you been?
Oh, Billy, I didn't even see you there. You scared me.
But you just... so is that the only way people can approach me? With a high swagger stride? You know what? No, I'm sorry. I still might be a little bit upset because of the whole wiener thing. Really, Creamy, I'm glad you're here, because I'd like to get to know you better.
I'm sorry, Billy, but I don't think your little chicken patty is mature enough to handle my schnitzel.
No fair. Just because I don't get your food metaphors doesn't mean I'm not mature. I only eat like 3 things. Baring. Oh, excuse me for a second. Yes, Mr. President, I do hear you. Sir, don't you think it's funny that we have the same last name? What do you mean it's her first name? I'm sorry, Mr. President, but that's too weird. I think we're just gonna have to remain friends.
I don't see how being gay for the president makes you mature.
What if it was Edward R. Murrow instead?
Billy, I'm sorry that I see you only once every 2 full moons, but I have an incredibly tight schedule to keep every night.
Hey, buddy, that's fine. I also have a tight schedule. Wake up, eat breakfast, eat lunch, eat dinner, go to bed. And then I just fit other things between those.
I'm sorry, Billy. Maybe one night we can hang out, but I'm too busy right now.
Oh. Hello?
Hey, Billy, I'm just checking in to make sure you're okay.
Oh, hi, Fwim. Why would I be not okay?
Well, usually good things don't seem to happen to you, unfortunately. And also, you're friends with that fiery dog fella. So I think that's reason enough to call.
Well, I wouldn't say friends, but yeah, I am okay. How are things going on your side? You know, with the things and stuff?
Oh, I got some doozies I'm working on right now. Have you ever tried to use the crayon pencil sharpeners on the back of the crayon boxes?
Once, and then never again.
It's not exactly hard to imagine the reason why you didn't keep using it. That's why I decided that I wanted to make a crayon pencil sharpener, but one that actually works.
A word of advice is you might want to consider the material you're using if you're going to implement this into an actual crayon box, assuming you're also working on a set of crayons. Because I had a rather unfortunate situation last week where I finished up with this box of colored pencils, and it had a colored pencil sharpener in the back of the box. And I took all the pencils out and I put them in a bin, and I was going to flatten the box so I could put it in the recycling bin. So I jump on the box, and the pencil sharpener slices my foot open. It was a mess. There was blood everywhere. It was a pain to clean up. I had to miss the first period of school that day, which ironically was health class.
I'm sorry that happened to you. But just so you know, I'm not going to be working on colored pencils or crayons or anything like that because Crayola's really bottled the market on that one. Pretty tough to come up with any colors they haven't. I don't mean to be that guy, but back in my day, there were like 12 colors and no royalty.
Oh my gosh, don't even get me started on the royal colors. I was doing a color by numbers thing, so I got a royal purple. For the purple spots, I use it, and it's like ugly gray pink. If I had to guess, the point of having a lot of different crayon colors is that so you don't have to mix them. And believe me, I'm competent enough to make ugly gray pink on my own.
Ha! That reminds me when I first painted my store. Todd came over and he gave me a color brochure full of all the different yellows and oranges. There were so many. I ended up deciding on a few. I can't remember what they were. I think it was macaroni and cheese and macaroni without cheese, with a touch of dandelion. By the way, you did recover from that foot thing, right?
Oh yeah, I slice myself up all the time. I heal really quickly. Sometimes I feel like furry modeling clay dipped in liquid.
Enjoy that while you can. Anyway, what are you up to right now?
Oh, I'm just sitting here watching TV and trying to resist the urge to eat any more snacks.
Oh, right. Sometimes I get you two confused. You're not the nocturnal one, so you wouldn't be doing much of anything. Sorry, I asked. Well, I think I'm just going to let you to that. Good night.
Good night, Fwim.
Good night, Billy. What a nice kid that Billy is.
So, how was your day?
Well, you see, it started with a crayon sharpener.
Goodbye, guys. I hope you enjoyed the sleepover.
Well, I'd say that went well. I don't have high standards, but I'd say it was top-notch. Yes, it was, but it did feel like that rain just kept going on and on. It's like it was never ending.